It was 3 a.m. A popular Canadian coffee shop. There is one old baker in the back that rarely interacts with me. He has passed a dirty joke or a dirtier ditty from his Navy days. Other than that, I'm alone. Not another soul around the area, and I expect it to remain so for at least an hour yet. I'm boxing up the day-olds for the homeless shelter when I swear I see something out of the corner of my eye. It's behind me. I turn, then look down. There's a small child standing there. A native little toddler with a faux hawk staring at me intensely. I'm struck dumb with how absurd the situation is. How did he get behind the counter? I didn't hear the door open or see him come through the counter. I scan the storefront. No one. I yell for the baker in case he has a friend or something visiting that lost their kid. He comes over and, like me, does a double take at the kid and is baffled. Kid starts muttering incoherently. I get him a glass of water and a donut hole, and the baker runs out of the store to do a perimeter of the block. I call the non-emergency line and explain I have a little kid with no parents. I can't get any information from the boy, just mumbles I can't make out. Police arrive. Baker comes back, says that he can't find anyone else in the streets. The guy from the 24/7 corner store said he'll keep an eye out. Police try to speak to the kid and also get nothing but mutterings and half-hearted gestures. They take him away. I see them again for their morning coffee, and they told me the little guy walked several kilometers from the nearest reservation in the dead of night to my store. He had got into his parents' medicine cabinet and just walked out of the house. I'm floored. It must have taken that poor baby hours to get to me. Seeing him behind me like that in the dead of the night still shakes me. Spooked me more than the guy that threw a pot of coffee at me, the woman that tried to stab me with a plastic spoon because I refused to give her a metal one, and the dude that waited around for 4 hours hoping to catch me alone so he could teach me a lesson since I didn't have the flavor of bagel he wanted. I worked a night shift at a large grocery store, one that wasn't open overnight but had a skeleton crew to work the loads and do prep and clean. I worked near the entrance. There was large glass doors but visually blocked off from my vantage point. Around 3 a.m., I hear knocking on the doors. This isn't completely uncalled for. Usually it's someone coming in for an early shift but didn't have a key card. Sometimes it's someone's food delivery, or sometimes a customer who thinks we are open despite clearly being closed. I approach the door. It's a man that I don't recognize. What from the rain? He looks normal enough, but something about him unnerved me. He had that vibe to him. You know, the one, where it seems like maybe they're on their way to becoming a full-blown meth head, but for now they still manage to give the appearance of functionality. He was holding his shit together just enough to appear normal, but the edges were definitely shaky. Anyway, without unlocking the door, I announced that the store was closed. He told me that he just needed my help. His car had broken down in the parking lot, and he needed a boost. I didn't drive, so I told him I couldn't help him. I should have walked away there, but he was out in the rain, and I did legitimately feel bad, so I told him I would see if any one of our few crew did drive. I did find someone who was willing to help, and got the night crew manager involved as well. We went out. Turns out he was parked a bit off from the entrance, in a fairly secluded spot, and he had a lady with him. There was a similar vibe with her, almost but not exactly normal. It didn't click right away, but I figured they had been hooking up in the car in the parking lot, maybe left the radio or lights on and drained the battery. To me, that explained the weird, unnerving feeling. They either felt ashamed or guilty, and it was showing through. Anyway, my coworker goes over to help give them a boost. The manager and I stay out there with him, nearby, watching. The two lovebirds kept peeking over at us a bit uncomfortably. After a few moments, the coworker returns from the car and hurries us back inside. We don't see them drive off, which seems odd. We get inside, lock up again, And then the coworker thanks us for staying out there with him and not leaving him alone with them. He also caught on to the unnerving air about them, and it made him worried. What worried him more was when it also turned out that there was nothing wrong with their car. We aren't too sure what their real motive was. Maybe they weren't planning on being more than one person, but nonetheless it was still pretty creepy. I worked overnight security at a convention center for a few years. One night at like 2 a.m., I was on cameras chit-chatting with another officer who was manned at what we called base. I had 2 other guys and my supervisor out on patrol. I saw a homeless dude go up our outdoor elevator to a public terrace and was keeping an eye on him. No big deal. He goes to a corner just out of reach of our cameras, a corner known to us for people to usually catch a quick nap in. I call on the radio to our nearest patrol officer, whom was also patrolling with my supervisor, that this guy was hanging out here doing whatever. They casually start walking towards the area. Upon their arrival to the scene, next thing I know, on another camera directly below this terrace corner, like 50 feet below, also right outside our office, I see a body drop straight down and land on their legs, collapsing to the ground. I quickly stand up from my chair and am panicking, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. I grab the first aid kit and run out of the office to go outside. My other officer on base jumps on the phone and calls 911. My supervisor says, "Base, call 911. We're already on it. I'm the first one there, and this homeless man was writhing in pain, shattered bones protruding from his ankles, bleeding from the mouth, trying to mumble what happened. He manages to roll over, and I see his hands are also fucked up, more bones protruding from his wrists. I don't dare touch him, and I doubted my first aid kit would have helped at all. My supervisor and other officer come running down the stairs to the scene. Apparently, when they arrived to the original scene on the terrace in my camera's blind spot, the guy was sitting on the ledge with the 50-foot drop directly below him. My supervisor yells, "Hey, get down from there." And the homeless dude just lifts himself up and drops, not a word spoken. First responders arrive and take him to the hospital. I, of course, had to write the report and review the video of the incident. A cop comes an hour later and shares his condition that he survived but will most likely never walk again. No major internal organ damage. Now for the major coincidence. A few days later, I get a new roommate who brings his girlfriend over. We're all hanging out, talking, drinking. I share that I work security at so-and-so, and the new roommate's girlfriend says, "Oh, didn't you guys just have a homeless man fall off your terrace and almost die? WTF? How'd she know that?" There was no media coverage. She wasn't there. Apparently, she was the godmother of his children, best friends with the mother. She shares that he was a homeless alcoholic junkie that constantly fought with the police and was in and out of jail multiple times. She got the call that he attempted suicide and rushed with the mother to the hospital to see him. She shared his conditions with me and that he was in critical condition but expected to survive. Her and my roommate shortly broke up, and I never saw her again. I was working the night shift in a gas station/truck stop in the mid-90s. I had another guy working with me who ran the diesel side, while I worked the gas side. We had a guy coming around 1 or 2 a.m. and just looked at stuff in the aisles for a while, before he left. I didn't really think twice about him. Later, at about 6 a.m., when I got off, I drove home past a convenience store. There were about 30 cop cars in the parking lot, and there weren't even 30 cop cars in the city. I came to find out that during the night, the convenience store had been robbed and the clerk had been taken into the cooler, tied up, and beheaded. The police took a copy of our security footage, which led them to a suspect who was later convicted of the murder. I can't even begin to tell you how hard it was to go to work the next day. We kind of assumed that the guy was going to rob us first, but didn't want to deal with two clerks, so he left and hit the convenience store instead. I worked the overnight shift at a drug rehab program. Patients reported strange things happening at night, and the former overnight staff also told me of different occurrences, including apparitions. Anyways, there was a particular room where a client experienced sleep paralysis regularly. I also felt cold spots in that room in the dead of winter with the heater on high. Both of these things could be rationally explained. However, while doing my hourly rounds, I went to open the door of this room when I noticed the doorknob turning as if someone was opening it from the other side. No problem. Sometimes the patients can't sleep and get up to talk or smoke a cigarette. Well, I step aside to let this person through, and the door opens. There is no one there. The way the room was set up, it would be impossible for someone to open the door and crawl back in bed without me noticing. Suffice it to say, I was a complete believer after this happened. There was other creepy stuff that staff and patients talked about, but this was my personal experience.